Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Astro Consciousness channel. I'm Millie, and I am here to talk to you about the weekly forecast of July 22nd through the 28th. In this channel, I talk about the astrological climate of the week ahead and talk about how you can integrate it into your personal and spiritual growth. But before I begin, I want to thank you all so much for letting me know where you're tuning in from, also for sharing your sun, moon, rising signs. That's a lot of fun. I mean, we have people from all over the world. We have people from Australia, from the UK, from all over the states, Arizona, Massachusetts, Florida, Washington. So many of you let me know. It's a lot to list everyone, but thank you all so much. Please feel free to let me know where you're tuning in from. One of you commented, it's really cool to see where people are tuning in from. And I agree. I really love that. I think my Venus in Sagittarius really enjoys that. Um, but one of the things I do want to mention is how interesting it is to see what people are experiencing as you're sharing your sun, moon, rising with me. Um, this energy, the energy that we're experiencing as we're coming out of that full moon in Capricorn, that, Uranus Mars conjunction in Taurus, all of that is really shaking things up. So I'm going to go ahead, do a little bit of a recap before I begin talking about the week ahead so that we can understand where we are going. We begin the week under the influence of the full moon in Capricorn. By this time, the sun is already in Leo, the moon is transiting the sign of Aquarius, but the energy of that full moon is still very much active. We need to remember that the energy of a full moon unfolds over the course of the following 2 to 3 weeks, depending on other astrological climates. I would say that you give the energy of this full moon at least through the end of July to really see what the potential manifestation is if you haven't experienced one yet. Although, because of the nature of everything that's been happening around this full moon, I think a lot of things have manifested for a lot of people already. But more than that, give it time for everything that you are coming to recognize, realize, and accept. Give it time to let it land, okay? And why is this? A full moon like the one we had on July 21st is one of a lot of responsibility, personal responsibility, right? So here we have this energy of a full moon in Capricorn letting us know that a foundation, a way that something, the structure of something, of how something used to work no longer works, whether it's within a relationship, where you live, how you work, where you work, okay? So that full moon has made it clear this is what needs to change. Now, in order for there to be a full moon in Capricorn, the sun needs to be transiting the sign of Cancer, right? So the sun in Cancer was highlighting, based on what this full moon is showing you, how are you showing up for yourself? How are you nurturing yourself? How are you taking care of yourself? And most importantly, in a very solar way, right? Because the sun implies some action or the showing up of us. How are we showing up as our own parent, Cancer? The sun shows up, the Cancer energy is the self-parenting energy. This is interesting because this full moon comes with decisions for a lot of people, whether they're external decisions, right? Like, do we live here? Do I work here? Do I work there? Or internal decisions of, I can no longer continue moving in, functioning in those dynamics for my well-being, for my mental well-being, for my emotional well-being, for my physical health, right? So whatever it is that this full moon has brought to the surface, the next 2 weeks will be about, for some people, taking some action towards that. This week ahead is going to show us how we're going to face certain things about ourselves. Remember, we're still digesting and integrating this very potent full moon. And so we're coming also from that Mars-Uranus conjunction, which shook a lot of things up for a lot of us, right? And the whole time that Mars was transiting the sign of Taurus, now it's in the sign of Gemini, the whole time, what that tells us is, how do I move in the direction, Mars? How do I take action from Mars, what I truly value and what my values are now? Taurus. Why? Because Taurus is ruled by Venus. And anything having to do with Taurus is first and foremost, how do I value myself and what do I value most in my life? And how do I make decisions from that space? So, with that said, let's get started with talking about the week ahead. Monday, July 22nd. It is the beginning of Leo season, and as soon as the sun enters the sign of Leo, it creates an opposition to Pluto retrograde in Aquarius and a sextile to Mars now in Gemini. So let's talk about these two things because I think this is an interesting dynamic, okay? So again, we're coming from that full moon in Capricorn, bringing up a lot of things that for a lot of people can manifest in having to make certain decisions, right? Certain decisions about where they live, for instance, where they work, perhaps about having to finally part ways with something or someone that they have held on to for quite some time, regardless of the circumstance. It may just represent it's time for us to move forward. Okay. Anytime we have the sun in opposition to Pluto, this is coming face to face, right? An opposition is a 180-degree angle where we're facing something or someone. And in this case, Pluto represents that thing we're facing, right? The sun in Leo, by the way, is going to highlight, as it always does, all of our sun signs because that's what the sun in Leo represents. The sun is in its home sign of Leo, and whenever that's activated, the way that we show up, the way that this ego, that this identity goes about life is highlighted. Leo energy is beautiful energy, but whenever it's activated, it's a question to us about how this identity, how ego, as for instance, Mildred the astrologer, is showing up not just in her work, but in her life, in her family. Are those things congruent with one another? Are they in integrity with who I'm being? So these are the questions of my identity, as people know me to be, as I know myself to be. Am I being honest, not just to others, but is the way that I'm experiencing this existence as a human aligning with what I wish to experience? Now, this has nothing to do with good or bad, right or wrong. This has to do with enough introspection to ask ourselves, is my life aligned with what matters to me? And look, because we're talking about such solar energy, such egoic energy, and I'm not talking about this in a bad way, in a critical way. I'm talking about this from the perspective of ego and spirit, right? We are all spiritual beings. At our core, we are divine beings, that this body, this identity, that's our ego. And is that ego aligned with spirit? When we think about the sun in the zodiac, we're talking about vitality, but not because the vitality just comes from us being able to move and run and show up and have energy. But when you notice that you feel the most vital, when you feel the most energized, this is because there is an alignment within you of your soul and your ego. And that's what this is highlighting. So here we have the sun in Leo in opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. So what is coming to an end? What is coming to a turning point? What realization are you coming to with that full moon in Capricorn that now you have to face a fear of that manifestation? I want to be very mindful here because, again, this is not to instill fear, but coming face to face with Pluto energy can look like, I have no way out, or what am I going to do? This is the worst thing that I've ever experienced, right? And expressing it in this way because it's a very honest expression and interpretation of Pluto. But Pluto also represents the deep psyche. And Pluto represents and reminds us that our fears are truly as big as we make them. Now, there's a lot that can be said on that. We can go in different avenues, but this is under the assumption that you are in a situation where you can choose how to look at whatever situation you're finding yourself in, right? So Pluto brings about this feeling of, this feels so much bigger than me. This feels so overwhelming. But when we look at the flip side of Pluto, because there is a flip side, this isn't just about looking at the shadow, looking at what we fear and staying afraid. This is about the empowerment that comes when we say, I have a choice here. I have a choice about how I'm going to move through this, the decisions that I have to make, how I'm going to look at it, who I'm going to ask for help. We have a choice. The thing is that the opposition to Pluto can either make it feel like we have no choice because that's what we genuinely believe, or we can be leaning on the idea that we have no choice because the choice that we do have to make is too difficult. Anything having to do with Pluto will always bring us to the brink of ourselves, to the brink of our greatest fear, of our greatest insecurity, and in this case, potentially made manifest, right? But with anything having to do with Pluto, it's facing your worst fear so that you can say, this doesn't dictate where my life goes from this point forward. I get to do that, the Sun in Leo. Now, is that something that happens overnight? I think for some people it will, depending on how this falls on your chart, on the situation that you're experiencing. But I do think that it will work through Leo season and into August, because we're going to experience a Mercury retrograde at the time for all of this to unfold. But what we're facing right now is this week, okay? But here's the thing. Here's another thing. The Sun is also creating a sextile to Mars and Gemini. So when we have oppositions or squares, I think that one of the reasons that oppositions and squares in the zodiac are described as difficult aspects, which they can be, but I think that the reason that they're described as that is that usually whenever we're experiencing one of those aspects, we're experiencing something in our life where we have no other choice. Like we're kind of forced into situations where we're like, okay, I have to do something here, right? And it can feel like we have no other choice. With a sextile and a trine, and I've talked about this before, there is an invitation for you to lean into that energy and use it. It's there. So what does the Sun in a sextile to Mars represents? It represents a go-getter attitude. It represents, I will make the decision. I am being assertive. And look, sometimes being assertive means saying, this doesn't work, this does, and this is a direction that I'm going to move in, and I don't know how it's going to turn out, right? Sometimes your assertion simply comes from making a decision, but at this point is making a decision that you know is for your well-being in the long run. And mind you, Mars and Pluto are within a trine of one another. So when we take action from a place I'm going to be courageous, right? Because anything involving Mars involves a certain level of courage that we feel we have to take in order to move in that direction. Here's this big thing happening, but within me, I find the courage to take action for what I know is best for me in the long run. And so then what happens? Then that big Pluto thing doesn't feel so big, or at the very least doesn't feel so overpowering because we're taking our power back. But that Mars and Pluto trine is eye on the prize, feeling empowered, feeling like that fire in your belly that says, I've got this. It's the remembering of what you've been through in order to understand that whatever is ahead, whatever's in front of you, you can move through it. You can move through it. But what does that require? That requires that you go deep within and ask yourself, where does my soul want to take me now? So one of the things that I'm going to begin doing in the weekly forecast is that at the end of the forecast, I'm either going to post a short mindfulness question for you to really set the intention to allow the answer to unfold throughout the week, or probably lead you on a short meditation just so that you can ground yourself. Because the energy that we're moving through right now isn't just about crossing our fingers and hoping that the best happens. Isn't just about waiting for life to happen to us, but it is about integrating our life with us and us with our life, right? This is how astrology is meant to be used. Astrology is a tool of self-awareness. But how can we become self-aware if we just keep waiting for life to happen? There has to be an initiation. There has to be an action that's taken on our behalf. And sometimes it's just a tiny little step. It doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't have to be anything grand. But sometimes taking our power back is the biggest thing that we can do, because then that's what's going to lead us forward. It's interesting because I get the feeling that the aspect that's going to be highlighted the most is the opposition of the Sun and Pluto. And yes, that may involve power imbalances, power struggles, all of those things. But how is it unfolding within us? And how can we integrate it into our life, into the actions that we take? That is self-awareness. Tuesday, July 23rd and Wednesday, July 24th, we have the moon transiting the sign of Pisces. So I actually really like that the moon is transiting the sign of Pisces, because as Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac and the moon transits there, which is our emotional processing, our emotional needs, this can actually be 2 beautiful days for us to come to an acceptance of the manifestations of that full moon in Capricorn. In Pisces, we can really create a beautiful connection to spirit, to ourselves. It's a beautiful 2 days to integrate through certain practices anything that you may have been experiencing over the last couple of weeks. So anything, again, like with yoga, sound bath, walking in nature, walking near water, or at the very least, just taking 5 to 10 minutes to meditate and go within. The moon in Pisces every single month can be healing in that way. Now, here's the thing. Through those 2.5 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, and part of Thursday, the moon is going to come into a conjunction to Saturn and to a conjunction to Neptune, okay? So when the moon comes into conjunction with Saturn, it can feel like our limitations are highlighted. So Saturn represents those external limitations. But if this is what you're experiencing in the middle of the week, I really invite you to ask yourself, is this really an external limitation, or is this an internal limitation? Is there a belief system inside of me that keeps me from seeing a different way of this situation? Is this something that I just need to hold with more tenderness, Pisces, in order to understand it, in order to let this pass so that I can move through this with a lot more peace and groundedness? Because here's another thing. While this energy is intense, because it is, and it has been, it will pass. And we will have the opportunity to think about not just think about what we want to do next, but actually move forward with the next couple of steps, right? And again, you kind of just have to let July pass by. And it's not just about, I'm going to stay in my home and not come out until August 1st. This is about being mindful. What are these situations trying to teach me? And so as the moon moves through the sign of Pisces, as I said, it's going to come to a conjunction to Neptune in Pisces. This is a really beautiful energy to, again, connect with source energy. Remind yourself that you are divinely and unconditionally loved, supported, and guided, whether you have a relationship with that or not. But here's what I invite you to begin opening yourself up to. Begin opening yourself up to the divine guidance that exists within you. Invite it every morning to lead your life. Invite it every single morning to lead your thoughts, to make your decisions for you. Don't forget the power that you have as a human being through the power of voice. And all you have to do is voice and state, I allow the divine wisdom that exists within me to guide my day today. And sometimes that's all you have to say. When we work with the cosmos in this way, when we work with the knowledge of astrology in this way, astrology really becomes a visceral experience. Astrology really becomes a language, the language that we use to connect with that invisible, ethereal energy that we live amongst. And it stops being this thing that is just outside of us telling us what's the next scary thing that's going to come ahead. And instead, we learn to integrate it. We learn to work with it. And we begin to ask more and more, what is this trying to teach me? Because that is what we're here to do. We're here to learn and we're here to create. And the only way that we can begin to create the life that we really want to experience from a place that feels aligned and in integrity with our soul is, first, we have to really open up ourselves to, what is the current situation trying to teach me? Another thing that Pisces energy really reminds us of, especially in its highest expression, is that no matter what's unfolding for you in this week, that you be kind, gentle, and forgiving with yourself. Truly. If we are asking ourselves, what is this situation currently trying to teach me? We have to be willing to be compassionate with ourselves. We have to open ourselves up to the kindness and the gentleness that our soul deserves right now, that we deserve right now. Because that's the thing that's going to allow a different unfolding to take place. But the lower expression of Pisces energy can mean just kind of getting lost in the pit of despair of, I don't know, decisions that we've made. One of the things that a good friend of mine always reminds me of is, you can never get it wrong. You can never get it wrong. So what that means is that at any given moment, we are always making decisions based on what we know at the time. We're doing the best we can with what we know at any given moment. So when we set the intention to ask ourselves, what is the current moment trying to teach me right now? That is how we learn, and that is how we hopefully integrate and do better next time. The whole point is to learn. The whole point is to observe. The whole point is to bring responsibility back to ourselves in that way, which is what the full moon in Capricorn is showing us, right? But sometimes can feel hard and judgmental, and that's not the point. But when we ask ourselves, what is this trying to teach me? The path forward feels a lot clearer and a lot differently. Thursday, July 25th, we have Mercury entering the sign of Virgo. Now, Mercury is going to enter the sign of Virgo, and on August 5th, it's going to start retrograding, and it's going to go all the way back to 22 degrees of Leo. And so we're going to have a Mercury retrograde in August from August 5th to the 28th. The retrograde will mostly focus on those Leo degrees. Now, that's important because a lot of the things that we have been thinking about, talking about, experiencing, conversations, breakthroughs, aha moments, all of those things, we are going to continue reviewing through most of the month of August, especially because Mercury in Leo is going to go back to that 26th degree of Leo, at which it created a square to Uranus and Taurus. So that's going to happen 2 more times throughout that retrograde period. And then Once Mercury goes direct and back into Virgo, it's going to remain there and finally switch signs in September. That's going to take us into eclipse season. Okay, so it's not too early to talk about eclipse season. For those of you that may not be aware of eclipse season, I invite you to think about the months of March and April of 2024. And I ask you, what unfolded for you around that time? Feel free to share in the comments, because especially that April month was a very pivotal moment for a lot of people. So whatever we experience in March and April of 2024, we are going to either continue or close off. There's a lot of things that are going to happen in September and October of 2024. So for that, I am creating a eclipse guide that is going to include 3 guided meditations, one for the lunar eclipse, one for the solar eclipse, and one short meditation to help ground you every single day during that eclipse season, which we need it. It's going to include a workbook in which you're going to be able to intentionally follow and integrate your process throughout that eclipse season. One of the things that I noticed during eclipse seasons is that a lot of people tend to really experience, yes, pivotal moments, but also feel a sense of fear, a sense of loss, and what do I do, and why are things changing so quickly? Eclipse seasons are a beautiful time for us to truly get aligned with the source and the purpose of our life. And the more intentional we are with meeting that energy on a day-to-day basis, the more we gain from it, the more we understand it, and the less we fear it. So I'm creating a waiting list at the bottom. So sign up for the wait list, because that's going to go for sale in early September. And just so you know, it's only going to be 25 bucks. Okay. So I'm giving a lot of value there, but I want to make it accessible to as many people as possible, because again, the point of astrology is to use it as a tool for self-awareness. And in order for us to even know what that means, we need to practice it. We need to do it. And so you will be able to understand what I do with clients and coaching through guided meditations, through mindfulness practices, and you will be able to navigate that eclipse season a lot better. I'm introducing it now in July because, you only see me once a week. So if we start creating a waiting list, you'll know, you won't miss out, and you will be able to have that tool right at the beginning of eclipse season. Okay, so with that said, we go back to Virgo, Mercury entering its home sign of Virgo. Now, Mercury and Virgo will probably want to make a lot of sense of all of these things. And we'll want to come up with a plan. We'll want to, check the details. We'll want to create some sort of action plan. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But the fact that we're going to have a Mercury retrograde and back into the sign of Leo in August, all that means is that there are things that we still need to process, certain conversations we still need to have, certain things we still need to accept, so that when Mercury goes back into Virgo, then we can really create that plan. And so that's probably not going to happen till September, again, into eclipse season, and it's going to be different. This is why I'm saying you have to allow the manifestations of this full moon in Capricorn, the second one especially, which is quite a doozy, to really land. Integrate it in your body. Take your time. Don't rush, but come back to yourself. Now, the energy that takes us into the weekend of July 26th, 27th, and 28th is the energy of Chiron retrograding in the sign of Aries. Chiron retrogrades in the sign of Aries from July 26th through December 29th, so pretty much to the end of 2024. Okay. So as I mentioned a few moments ago, the month of April 2024 was really significant for a lot of people. And remember, don't forget to share your experiences in the comments. Chiron played a massive role in that entire month, because it was contacted by the sun, by Mars, by eclipse, by the nodes, by everything in Aries at the time. Okay. So Chiron, we all know it in astrology as the wounded healer. But what does that mean? Chiron represents a wound that we come with, that we are inevitably meant to work through in order to gain wisdom from it. Now, does everyone work with their Chiron in a positive way and gain the wisdom that they're meant to? I think in some ways, yes. Whether it's intentional or not, I think in some ways, yes. Are there times or scenarios in which people completely miss it? Yes, also. But here's the thing with Chiron in Aries. Chiron in Aries has represented the wound that comes with choosing yourself, the wound that comes with asserting yourself. With the North Node transiting the sign of Aries, this has been a point of growth. So Chiron in Aries, because it's had to do with the nodes, because it has played such a big role during eclipses, this has affected the dynamic in our relationships. So what does this look like? This looks like having difficult conversations around how you no longer want to show up in relationships and how you would like others to show up for you. Asserting yourself in certain situations, whether it's in relationships with a significant other, family, friends, work. Chiron in Aries has been the wound of desiring much more genuine connections and relationships with others, and the pain that comes with others not being able to meet you there, right? Whether it's because they just don't want to or they're incapable of it, whatever it is the pain that comes from the realization, wow, they really can't meet me. They really don't know how. Or perhaps we're the ones that can't show up in that way, right? Because it's important for us to look at how we have or haven't shown up for others as well. So that Chiron in Aries energy is about healing the wound around relationships and around the ups and downs of relationships, especially this year, and saying, how do I hold the wisdom of this pain and of this wound so that I don't just isolate myself, so that I just don't become the lone wolf in my life, so that I just don't fall into this false idea that I am all by myself and that I have to do it all myself. And if that is the space that we find ourselves in, how can we begin to come out of that and begin to create connection in our lives that's coming from a much more aligned place within our soul? So Chiron going retrograde over the next couple of months is about integrating all of these lessons very slowly, very subtly, because like Neptune, like Saturn even, a lot of these integrations happen on their own. And it's one of those things where we're going to look, more so in January of 2025, we're going to look back and say, oh, that's how that wound was integrated, right? When I asserted myself back in April, it caused this thing, and then it hurt, and then I had to move through that hurt, but this is what it taught me. Oh, back in April of 2024, when I had that difficult conversation, it hurt, it felt hard, but this is how I established myself as an individual, and this is how I integrated the rest of the year, and this is what I learned. That's how this works. Now, it is so important that we remember that this is what astrology teaches us. Astrology is so gracious in that it gives us timelines, right? One of the questions that I get asked often is, how long is this going to last, right? When is this going to happen? There's a lot of questions based around time, which I understand, and astrology is a tool that can help us navigate that. But when it comes to internal processes, we want to have an experience, we want to talk about it once or twice with someone, and then we want to be over it. And that's not how it works. We have to give ourselves time to learn these things. We have to give ourselves time for these lessons to truly be integrated in our nervous system, to really become wisdom. So for something to become wisdom requires time, requires space, requires mindfulness, requires that we ask ourselves different questions so that we can show up to life differently and choose differently if we are presented with the same situation again. Our soul lessons don't just land now. They require time. And that is how we integrate. That is the meaning of the wounded healer. Because in order for the wounded to become a healer, not only do they have to feel and experience the wound, but they have to process, integrate, and understand the wisdom of that wound, and thus becoming a healer. Okay? So I'm going to finish this week's forecast with a short meditation and something to ground you throughout the week so that you can navigate this week a little better. So to begin, find a comfortable seating position, making sure that your feet are flat on the ground. As you do that, place your hands over your chest and close your eyes. Beginning to slowly inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. One more time, slowly inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Knowing that every time that you take a moment to do this, you are showing up for yourself. You are showing up for your peace of mind. And you are showing up as the creator of your life. Inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Remembering that every single time that you show up for yourself in this way, you are building a bridge between your human and your soul. And this is how you begin to live a soul-led life. With every inhale and exhale, slow down the thoughts in the mind. Notice how much calmer your body feels. Notice how much more present you are. Perhaps this is the first time all day that you've taken the time to simply just sit and breathe intentionally. I invite you to bring your awareness down to the bottom of your feet. And imagine roots coming out from the bottom of the feet. And imagining those roots traveling through each and every single layer of Mother Earth. And as they do, you understand that you are always held, grounded, and sustained by the unconditional love of Mother Earth. In your next inhale, make it a deep one. Imagine the energy of Mother Earth traveling up those roots and entering through the toes, up the ankles, the calves, the thighs, the hips, the belly, the heart, the shoulders, the neck, the jaw and chin, the third eye, and finally, out the crown of the head. Take a deep inhale, slowly inhaling, allowing your body to take all of this grounding, unconditional, loving energy in, and as you exhale, Allow this grounding energy to land in every cell, in every layer, in every muscle of your body. One more deep inhale, expanding the body, allowing this grounding energy to land in every layer, in every muscle, in every cell of the body. Here you are, grounded in your body, in your life, in your wisdom, knowing that you are held, sustained, and guided at any moment. Take a deep breath in. Allow this truth to settle in. With the exhale, release anything that doesn't serve you. Bring your awareness to your heart space. Feel the warmth in your heart space. As your body is now grounded, feel the warmth in the heart space. Imagine that warmth getting bigger and bigger. Imagine that light getting bigger and bigger. Imagine it traveling through every part of your body, traveling through every part of the room that you're sitting in. That is the light of the divine wisdom and energy that exists within you. Anytime you come to this space, this is what is available to you. May the divine light of your heart guide you today and every single day. Set the intention for that to be the case for you today and every single day. Take a deep breath in. As you exhale, go on with the rest of your day knowing that you are unconditionally loved, guided, held, and sustained. Open up your eyes slowly. Thank you all so much for joining me this week. May this all be of service, and I'll talk to you next week.